Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Table 442 podcast. Against all odds, we're back for episode 2. I'm joined today by my co-host Aaron Briddy. How you doing, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. What feedback did you get from the mate about the first pod?
You know what? I got some really good feedback. A lot of stuff to build on. A few things we can tweak here and there to make things better. But a lot of really nice, positive feedback. Which was nice to receive.
I thought you. I mean, the way you started that answer was so Premier League manager at a press conference. Building things up, blah 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 blah. But no, it was nice, wasn't it? It was nice, and I think it's made like we were a little bit nervous, like back doing the first podcast, but I think that's turned into excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. Before filming the first one, my heart pounding, worried, thinking, "Oh God, just don't want to flop here." Whereas today, I've actually been really excited to finish work and start recording this one. Looking forward to it.
Same here. What about the content? So, what's the WhatsApp group been saying about the contentious Funbined 11?
The big one, and it's the one that was a poll about on Twitter, was the only real argument I saw anybody have was Mane and Giggs on the left. Obviously, we both went for Mane in our team. Didn't even really discuss Ryan Giggs. In fact, we both just dismissed him off the bat. And then, actually, Giggs has won the poll, and most people we spoke to have said, "Oh, actually, we would have had Giggs in." So that's been the big one that stood out.
Yeah, well, let's get to that as we discuss this week in WhatsApp. So yeah, as Aaron alluded to, kind of the big talking point coming out of the first podcast, the Funbined 11 between Manchester United's 99 treble winners and United's Liverpool, 2020 title-winning side, was the omission of Ryan Giggs. And I must admit, listening back, not to really even give Giggs a mention was probably a little bit dismissive of him.
Yeah.
I stick by Mane, but what kind of things have you heard from people on Twitter or in the WhatsApp groups this week about why Giggs should be inside?
The big one that I had was come in quite a bit from our mutual friend of ours, Pete, was it wasn't just Giggs' impact on, say, the final or just the Premier League season. It was Giggs' impact across the whole treble-winning campaign. He obviously kept alluding back to and quite happily sharing videos on Twitter of the wonder goal against Arsenal in the FA Cup, where, to my mind, there's a bit of suspect defending and goalkeeping from the Arsenal team, but it's still an absolute wonder goal. So yeah, big arguments for Ryan Giggs from a lot of people, and I think, looking back, we probably should have given him a bit more discussion. I'm the same as you. Even taking that into consideration, it wouldn't change my mind. I think I put on Twitter Mane's stats from last season: 22 goals, 12 assists, African Player of the Year, and 4th in the Ballon d'Or. I think.
Yeah, and I think we didn't get into those stats because both of us
just
were pro Mane from the start.
Yeah.
Actually, there's more stats to back that up. Like Mane, I think his winning goals contributed more points to any team than any other player in the Premier League last year. He was he was a proper shout for Player of the Year. To be honest, I think to be voted 4th in the Ballon d'Or. I mean, it's not as simple as this, but he was voted 4th in the Ballon d'Or. I don't think Ryan Giggs, for all of his admirable qualities of longevity, consistency, producing big moments like that FA Cup game, I don't think he was ever really considered one of the best players in the world.
No, neither do I. And that's another discussion I was having with some friends on WhatsApp, is that he was great and all those things that you've just said about him, mate. We won countless trophies, but he was always part of a great team. He was never sort of the focal point. I mean, he only ever got two double figures in 2 seasons. Again, back at his peak, wingers weren't what they are now, where most wingers are expected to get, like, top end wingers will get double figures every season. So accept that. But even his assists over such a huge period of time, playing in such good teams with great strikers and great players alongside him, his stats don't really jump out at you like, wow, yeah, this guy was a machine.
They do over the period of his career. Like when you just look at the numbers, the appearances, the assists, the goals, the trophies, of course. But I think when you consider a breakdown of that season by season, Mane may be a better player within his peak, but
Mhm.
probably won't stay at the top
Yeah.
of the game for longer.
As
So,
long, yeah.
like, there are arguments for and against, but I
Yeah.
think I would stick by the fact that during that season in particular,
Yeah.
Mane was more impactful. So
Agreed.
we're not trying to, annoy the few people that are great, that we're very grateful to have engaged with us after our first podcast.
Yeah,
But you are
absolutely.
wrong, and we are right. And if you continue to listen to the podcast for a few more episodes, you will learn why.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
there we go. No, I jest, of course. We will let the people speak. Giggs slash Mane. We'll go Giggs slash Mane. We'll take a 12-man squad, and we'll just see what the lay of the land is on the day for that one.
Yeah.
Anything else, Aaron, from the WhatsApp group? It's been obviously a bit of chat on the back of the Liverpool Man United snore draw.
Yeah, well, the only other thing, and it was something that, again, that we very briefly, I think it was you touched on in the first episode, was Bruno Fernandes looking like he's tiring a bit. Obviously, Ollie's been at a press conference today saying that he's not tiring, and if he'd have scored the winner, you'd have all been saying he's the best player in the league again. But I don't think you can really argue his performances have dropped off a little, and that's not in any way a slight on him. We went into last week how great he's been since he came, etc. But I think he's one goal, 1 assist now in 5 games. He lost possession 19 times against Liverpool, and he's not having this same impact on games as he was a few weeks ago. But he's probably running on fumes, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, Ollie has a point. If he was a match winner again, nobody would have said it, but he wasn't a match winner.
Yeah.
So I think if you watch the game, I don't think there's an indication that he wasn't like pressing. He wasn't chasing after the ball and stuff like that. Like, he wasn't just completely heavy legged, but it's such in those big games, it's such a fine margin of, like, in the 70th minute of games when it's mentally, physically tough.
Yeah.
How brave are you going to be on the ball? What energy have you got to just create a little bit of space for a cross, for a shot, just to burst in the box to get in front of your man? And I just think it's those margins where he's just slipping a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a criticism of him.
No,
every
not at all.
player will go through this. I see it with Kane, goes through spells like this at Spurs quite frequently, and then he'll come back a little bit refreshed later on. He'll be, back, I think, in a few games, but I would just expect him to have a slightly quieter period now, and I would be interested to see how United respond.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agree. Well,
it was a very illustrious set of teams we talked about in the Funbined 11 last week. In the Funbined 11, we're going to do a little bit later. We're coming from a very different direction.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be a really interesting one. I really enjoyed preparing for it.
Yeah,
but in the meantime, before that, we're going to go and see who will be joining, or what will be joining, David O'Leary, Alan Kirbishley, and Yellow Cards for Celebrations in our next section, Gardening League. So this has created quite a lot of talk for me from friends just putting messages in, and a few people dropping them on Twitter. So we had Andy Gill, who said he'd like to see the media overhyping players for no reason on Gardening Leave.
Yeah, I can
name dropping
agree with that.
Certain Paul Pogba. I think that's fair. And there was Will Selwood, who gave a big rousing defence of your selection for Gardening Leave, and in particular a mention for the iconic Emmanuel Adebayor celebration.
But we did agree we'll give that special dispensation.
Yeah,
it's just so iconic.
Yeah, if there's anything that's opposite from a yellow card, that's what he should get for that.
Agreed.
If you're listening again this week and you have anything for any suggestions for Gardening League, please tweet us. The Twitter handle will be up at the bottom of the screen. So tweet us your suggestions with what you think we should send there. But Aaron, let's hear yours first.
Oh, okay. So I struggled a bit this week. It's a very fine balance between trying to find something not too obvious and something that you won't care about in the slightest. And what I've gone for is sort of, how to describe it, sort of the gentrification of footballers themselves. And what I mean by that is there's no real mavericks around anymore. I feel like when we were
Yeah.
growing up, there was a few loose cannons. You're just as likely to put the ball in the top corner as they were to put the opponent into the stand. You know, like the guys that had the collars up on the Nike TV advert, Eric
Yeah.
Cantona's, Francesco Totti's, the flawed geniuses. And I feel
Yeah.
like no one's like that anymore. There's so much on the line with sponsorship deals and this and that and the other that everybody's just whitewashed to basically be clones of each other.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see that. I think especially like obviously you still have players who can produce things out of nothing on the
Oh yeah,
pitch, but I think the
yeah,
personality wise, like there is a lot of
yeah,
uniformity to how interviews are done nowadays, and
yeah.
like you rarely watch an interview of the player and think that you've really learned anything
Yeah,
or
like,
taken
whoa,
anything from it.
message your mate, like, wow, have you seen what he's just said? Because it's all the
Yeah.
same cliches, little media sound bites.
Yeah. No, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Anybody in particular come to mind that like there's a Maverick you really miss?
So we've had our fair share at Middlesbrough, to be fair. I suppose being a relatively small club, but quite ambitious, especially in sort of the 90s and 2000s, we weren't perhaps able to attract the top players. What we could was attract talented but flawed players. And we've obviously
Yeah.
had Fabrizio Ravanelli, who was fantastic for us, but a bit of a nutter. But helped shape the club going forward because he refused to train on our old training facilities. We went out, spent a load of money, and now we've got great training facilities. Another one is Alan Boxic, again, who was a phenomenal player, arguably to many people, obviously, maybe the older generation would say Croatia's best player of all time or one of. I've got a quick story that will sum up Alan Boxic, in fact, in his time at Middlesbrough.
Alan Boxic, the Maverick. Let's hear it.
If we've got a minute. So, sort of every 3 months or so, he'd fly a new, like basically a supermodel in from Croatia to come and live with him. And they lived with him, cleaned his house, did all his cooking, did everything for him, and he would pay them. So the players never saw these women. They see them come into the house because the players all lived together in like the same area, a place called Wynyard, and then that'd be it. They'd never see him again, and then he'd fly him off, and a new one would come in when he got bored, basically. And one day he comes into training and he's absolutely seething, effing and jeffing. These women, they're going to kill me. Da, 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 da. So anyway, it turned out that the day before.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it turned out that he'd gone home the day before. He didn't eat with the players because he decided that the canteen food wasn't good enough. He needed his special food cooking at home, and that was that. So he went home. They opened the door expecting his food to all be there. Woman wasn't there, so he was livid. Anyway, it turned out that whilst he was at training, she decided to go on a run and got lost because he never used to let her out of the house anywhere. She didn't know where she was. An hour later, the police turned up at the door with this woman crying and said to Alan Boxic, "Do you know like this woman then?" And he's like, yeah, I do, but I just need you to wait there one moment. And he turned round, went behind the door, picked up her bags that he'd packed, handed them to the police and said, "You take her to the airport. She doesn't live here anymore." So the woman stood there crying her eyes out, and he's like, no, you know the rules. I told you the rules. I pay you to cook, I pay you to clean, I don't pay you to run. Now get out of my house, you're not welcome here anymore. That's a Maverick.
I mean, there's certainly one way of putting it. I could think of a couple of stronger words, but yeah, I just don't think you'd get
wouldn't get a footballer doing that.
Rotation of women in the Mail Online days.
No.
In like the Mail Online would be all over that if Christian Benteke.
Yeah, imagine that. Or Jack. Everyone saw the picture of Jack Grealish the other week and how that blew up the internet. You can't do anything. Footballers can't do anything anymore. They've all just got to be the clones of each other, and I hate it.
Yeah, I understand. I think the Boxic story is a great story, but not a fantastic argument for the return.
Yeah, perhaps not an argument,
but for the return of Mavericks to the game.
Yeah, that's just a funny story.
It is a funny story. Mine is if you take kind of the continental nuances of that story.
Yeah.
Mine is completely opposite and very, in my opinion, kind of English. I would expect people who have this opinion like to have Union Jacks in their Twitter bios and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for me, it's short corners.
Okay.
Can't be doing with short corners. Get the ball in the box. Smash the ball in the box. Get your biggest lad on the end of it and try and make something happen. I've struggled to recall many successful short corner routines.
It just doesn't happen, does it? I hate it.
Doesn't happen. You don't see it happen. And like, how frustrating is it, especially when there's like a clear lack of concise plan for set pieces, and the centre halves go up, and then it's passed short, and then the bloke who it's passed to has no idea what he's doing with it.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't understand if you're working on short corner routines and there's a bit of movement to a near post and it creates space for this bloke and this bloke, fair enough. But so often now, like, I think because there's like this obsession with possession, in general speaking, and like the art of, not necessarily the art of crossing the ball, but the art of knocking it long and getting on someone's head is it's a bit looked down upon.
Yeah, frowned upon almost.
Yeah, like short corners all the time. And like any club has the right to be good at corners. Like, all you have to do is practice them, get someone who's like good delivery. It can be a great equalizer. So I just don't understand why so many clubs knock the ball short all the time. Every time Spurs do it, and we don't score many from corners, but every time we do it, I'm just screaming, get the ball in the box.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. We've gone the other way this season in that we've actually started to just whip it in a bit, very Warnock-esque, and we've managed to nick a few goals from it. We're not exactly a free scoring team. So yeah, I'm all for that. Just get it in the box.
It's got to come from the it must come from the manager, right?
Yeah, it has to. Yeah. It has to, because everything is set out to the slightest detail, isn't it? So something like that has to come from the manager.
Yeah. So I'm not a fan of short corners. However, I would put more of an argument for this than what I did last week. But if I have to sit for another interview of a player saying, "Oh, these are really tough opponents, we won't take them lightly," or it was a really hard game out there, we just won 4-0, and blah blah blah, then that's like, mind-numbingly boring for me, and I would rather see the return of Alan Boksic-esque, not Alan Boksic precisely,
not necessarily Alan Boksic,
Alan Boksic-esque characters to the game. Yeah, I think that's a stronger case. Unless I've managed to convince you about short corners.
See, you've managed to convince me.
Changing your Twitter profile to show Union Jack flag.
You have twisted my arm a bit in that. My thing is just like a slight grievance with. It doesn't really impact the game as such. Whereas this season, I mean, we scored one against Birmingham the week. The keeper just dropped it in his net. That was from lumping it in the box. That can actually have an effect on games and seasons. So you've talked me around a little bit.
We're just like now making the argument for each other.
For each other. Well, I feel like I ruined my Alan Boksic argument with that story that was kind of just linked to Alan Boksic rather than a reason why I think Mavericks should come back. But now I feel like I can't use him anymore because I sound like I'm advocating for footballers to lock women in houses.
Yeah, I tell you what, just because it's early in the pod and we don't want to upset anybody from a PR perspective, maybe we should stick to corners on Gardening League and not the complete misogynistic approach of having a women rotation system. So yeah, I think it's a tough call, but I think just for PR reasons, let's send short corners to Gardening League. Okay. And like I said, guys, listening, guys and girls, if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to send to Gardening League, just stick them on Twitter. The handle will be up on the bottom of the screen. Okay, next headline section, Funbined XI. Went for something a bit different this week than combining two top sides, and took inspiration from Mesut Ozil's protracted but very soon to be completed by looks of it departure from Arsenal. Obviously, Ozil are making the headlines for sitting in the reserves or wherever he's been sitting for much of the last year and taking home a big wage for doing absolutely nothing. So we have scoured the rest of the Premier League squad lists and found an 11 of players that you may have forgot play for their current clubs because they've been picking up a wage and not appearing for their club in quite a long time. So this was quite fun to research. There were some names that popped up that I haven't seen since like FIFA 16 or something. So yeah, let's let's get started. I mean, this could easily also, as a precursor to this, be a Chelsea reserve 11.
Yeah,
But
I kind of tried not to do that because
yeah,
it would have been so easy to just whack a list of Chelsea players out. Like, oh, did you know that this guy still plays there?
absolutely. Yeah, like Matthias Kesman. Yeah, so I've tried to cap myself on Chelsea players, but
I have still got 7.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Let's see where we've got to, and we'll start, Aaron, with your goalkeeper. Who've you got?
So I've gone in goal Liverpool, Loris Karius.
Yeah, me too.
You got him as well, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think obviously capped by Germany every level up to senior. Never really looked like he was the answer to Liverpool's goalkeeping issues, but I think the final nail in that coffin was obviously the Champions League final, where he was undoubtedly at fault for 2 goals, basically threw one at Benzema and then dropped a Bale 40-yarder into his own net.
Mm.
And I don't think he's ever really recovered from that. He's spent a season on loan at Besiktas. He's currently on loan at Union Berlin, and I think he'll just slowly creep out of the back door one day when his Liverpool contract's up.
Yeah, it's scary to think like his last game for them was the Champions League final.
Yeah, which is just crazy.
He's not been out of the fold at Liverpool for that long, but I think like the Alisson has come in and been so good and so secure. It's like he's been there for ages.
Yeah.
So it makes it seem like Karius was like 10 years ago during the Liverpool banter days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I couldn't look past him for goalkeeper. So that's one selection nailed down. What about defenders? A couple of centre halves have you got?
Yeah, so I've got a flat back 4.
Yeah.
Do you want my centre backs first?
Yeah, let's go centre halves.
I've got Phil Jones.
Yeah, Phil Jones.
Phil Jones, and then one that's close to the home for me, Ben Gibson.
Oh, Ben Gibson, yeah.
So Phil Jones obviously was always never quite lived up to the early promise, you could say, but he did look like he'd sort of carved a decent enough career for himself at United as maybe a bit of a utility man. Not going to be the number 1 centre half, but you know he could do a job in the cups or cover injuries, can play in midfield, centre back, right back, etc., etc. But this season he's not even got given a squad number. He's not registered to play.
I feel like Phil Jones has been quite. His career's just been ruined by social media.
Yeah,
but like
all the weird pictures of him and stuff.
Yeah, but because of social media, like nobody forgets that he plays for Man U. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's like, how does this guy play for Man U?
Yeah,
that makes sense. But like, it is still astounding that he is still a Manchester United player, having effectively peaked.
Yeah,
about 8 years ago.
Crazy, isn't it?
And they've still not managed to get him off the books.
Yeah.
Ben Gibson, really interesting one because he was so highly rated.
Yeah,
in the Championship with Borough. Did he ever play in the Premier League with Borough? Or did he get his move?
Yeah, so he was centre half for us the season we went up. We broke pretty much every defensive record in the league, most clean sheets, longest amount of minutes without a goal, etc., etc. He was then one of the very few players that could sort of hold his head high off the back of our Premier League season. He was on the verge of an England call-up, and then when we went down, instead of moving, he opted to stay and try and help us get straight back up at first go, which we obviously didn't. And then he moved on to Burnley for 15 million, which at the time was their record signing. I think it still is, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But he'd never made a league appearance for them. He just went there. I think he fell out with Sean Dyche, was supposedly what people say. Never ever made an appearance for them, and he's now back on loan at Norwich in the Championship. So it was a weird one.
There's a bit of like he's not been shy about saying it either, has he, on Twitter?
No.
Like he's like, I think Burnley fans, they don't like it, but Burnley have usually like had this cycle where they get a centre back like Michael Keane who's performing really well, and then they'll bring Tarkowski in, and then he'll be on the bench for a whole year. And then they'll sell Keane, and then Tarkowski will move up.
Yeah,
so like I assumed after Gibson's first season that would kind of happen, but he just disappeared.
Never did. He just I don't think he played for like 18 months.
Yeah.
He just never got in the team, never got near. And back on loan now.
He had big England prospect. He was a big England prospect at one point.
Yeah, he was really good.
Couple of good shouts there. I've gone for Winston Reid.
Bloody hell.
who's still at West Ham and only 32. Winston Reid is only 32.
No,
This was the most surprising thing because he last made an appearance for West Ham in March 2018.
Sure?
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I'm sure. I double checked the number 3 or 4 times that I was seeing that on the screen, but I might have to check 3 or 4 different sources. But like he was like a Premier League regular for West Ham, like one of their better players, like consistently making over 30 appearances a season. And then he just kind of disappeared, but like not, I assumed because we hadn't seen a lot of him, he disappeared because like he's 34, 35 getting on.
And his body's falling apart.
He's only 32, like he could have played like 30 to 32 is like pretty good age for a centre half.
And the thing is on top of that, it's not just like he's 32 now, but it feels like he's been gone off the scene for ages as well. Like, it feels like
there's so much turnover at West Ham, isn't there?
Yeah.
That, like it just a long time ago, and I can't believe he's still there. He's on loan at the MLS at the moment, but yeah, that it surprised me that he was still at West Ham and that he was 32.
Yeah, that surprised me.
And then this one, I've come from a slightly different angle. It might not exactly fit the brief, but little quiz question, Aaron. Can you name who Southampton signed this summer or the previous summer?
No, what centre back?
They signed a centre half, but I'm telling you that nobody knows about it because he's never played. He's not played for him. They spent £10 million on Mohamed Salisu. I hope I'm saying that right. From Valladolid, and I definitely didn't say that right. £10 million for Southampton, like
it's not
small change. Like they've only spent 30 million in the summer, and 10 million of it was on this centre half, and he's not played a game for him yet. If you told me that he was a Southampton player, I wouldn't have known it.
No.
So whether that's forgetfulness in terms of like, he's been there so long, maybe not. But I genuinely didn't know.
Yeah, no, you could have put him in front of me and I wouldn't have been able to say.
Yeah, but maybe he's one for the future. He's only 21. And Ben, I reckon Vestergaard, a really good partnership this year. So I definitely don't want to be writing him off. But I couldn't believe it when I saw his name on the squad list. So I thought through that one in from a different angle. But
yeah, that's a good shout.
It's hard for me to look past Ben Gibson. I think is the number one there.
I'd go Ben Gibson, Winston Reid.
Yeah,
that Winston Reid one shocked me. If nothing else, it's his age.
Yeah, I tell you what, I need to verify that is absolutely true because even though I've said it 10 times, I'm still
second guessing yourself now.
Yeah. So while I'm looking Winston Reid up, who is going to partner Ben Gibson in this team, do you want to talk to me about who you've got at fullback?
Yeah. So again, these are ones that you won't have forgot that they exist as players, but they're forgotten in the sense of the Premier League. So I'll go right back first with Slick Vic himself, Victor Moses from Chelsea.
Yeah.
So he's been out on loan since the 18-19 season, Fenerbahce Inter, and he's currently at Spartak Moscow.
Yeah, I mean he has hit the big 3 there in terms of the gossip column transfer links.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. Big time one within the standard Fenerbahce link, and then now off to some sort of backwater league to just see out his days.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a bit weird one because he had a weird start to his Chelsea career. I think he was there for 3 years before he actually made an appearance, and then he actually got in the team and had a couple of solid seasons playing right wing back under Conte. Yeah. And then since then, he's just been out on loan, and I think you sort of forget that he's still there and still a Chelsea player.
Yeah, it's a really strange one because as well he just like keeps signing new contracts there.
Yeah.
I kind of get it because he's then on that Chelsea wage at Spartak Moscow rather than
on the Spartak Moscow wage at Spartak. Yeah. No one wants that.
So I understand from his point of view why he's signed new contracts, but why are they giving him new contracts?
Yeah.
What's baffles me, but that's a great shout, and he's probably slightly more of a natural right back than the guy I've shoehorned in, who's another Chelsea forgotten man, which is Matt Miazga.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go. That's everything. He's not played for Chelsea since April 2016. I think he was a very cynical purchase in an attempt to break the American market.
Yeah.
And it ended up not doing so very unsuccessful at Reading. I'm not saying his loan spells have been unsuccessful. I mean, a few years later along came a chap called Christian Pulisic, which has been a slightly more successful experiment.
More lucrative.
to break the American market. Yeah. So I mean, Moses, Miazga, you could put about eight Chelsea players.
Yeah,
in
there's loads of them. I think they've still got Zappacosta on the books as well. When I was looking,
Yeah,
another one
I
at
know.
right
Yeah.
back.
I think based on the criteria of this side, which is like it's a best 11, and so there has to be a combination of ability
Yeah.
/ forgetfulness. I think we've got to have Moses in because otherwise we might be desperately short of quality.
Yeah.
He'll probably be the best player in this team from right back, possibly. So he might be pushed further forward in the second half. But yeah, so Moses slips in at right back, and if you got a left back?
This is another one that nobody will have forgotten exists, but again, forgotten in the sense of he's not playing, and it's almost inexplicable as to why. And it's someone you'll be far, far better placed to comment on. It's Danny Rose.
Yeah.
156 appearances for Tottenham, England's number one left back till not that long ago, to suddenly not even having a squad number and not registered to play. It's in the sense of forgotten man. It's a weird one.
Yeah, he's definitely the forgotten man at Spurs. Like, I don't think Danny Rose's media profile means he's ever forgotten. He's obviously always got like a Sun journalist on speed dial to do an interview. But like, I don't mind hearing him speak. I think he's quite refreshing with his interviews. We talked about earlier how there's no Mavericks in the game and stuff like that. Like, at least when Danny Rose speaks, it's worth listening to.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a sad decline at Spurs, to be honest. He was a big fan favourite during the peak Poch years, but the club just haven't been able to get him off the books, and like he's been stubborn about it. They've wanted to sell him for a couple of transfer windows, not been able to find a buyer. There's that kind of iconic like scene in the Amazon documentary, which has become a bit of a meme on Spurs Twitter, which is like Daniel Levy saying, "Oh, well, Bournemouth are interested, Newcastle are interested," and Danny Rose is like, "Any news on Milan?" And Levy's like, "No, Danny." Yeah, so
nothing wrong with setting your sights high.
No, yeah, exactly. I think, and there's rumours that there's a Turkish club in from, and he's fast approaching his Turkish move window.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think again that's going to take some beating. I think he falls in a little bit of the Phil Jones category that nobody's forgot he's around, but like it is inexplicable that he's not he's still at that club. Whereas mine is I think he's a bit more forgetful, but he's certainly not as good a player, and it makes a bit more sense because it comes from Chelsea, and that's Kennedy. You're not really a left back, but he's a left-hand sided player.
I had him in initially and then swapped him, so yeah, I totally agree with you.
It's again, I don't know how he's still there. Last appearance in January 2018, last Prem appearance May 2017, 27 appearances in 5 years.
It's just weird.
Just another one on that Chelsea continuous cycle of loans and unsuccessful loans. So, we could easily pick loads of Chelsea players. So let's get Danny Rose in, I think.
Okay.
What do you reckon?
Yeah,
so
let's, because I've got 3 Chelsea players in centre mid.
Yeah. Although good chemistry. Actually, would it be good chemistry? Because they've probably never trained together.
Yeah, that's the thing. Some of these guys have probably never met each other, despite the fact that they've all been at Chelsea for several years.
Yeah, they'll be like that the whole Chelsea squad WhatsApp group with loads of unsaved numbers.
Yeah,
I have no idea who this guy is. I've never spoken to him or seen him before. Okay, so we've got Karius in goal, and then Moses, Winston Reid, Ben Gibson, and Danny Rose across the back 4.
Do a job
that's not a bad
do a job
actually, so far. What about midfield? What formation you got? Sounds like a 4-3-3.
Yeah, so I've got a 4-3-3 with 4 centre mids. With 3 centre mids, sorry.
Yeah.
All 3.
I thought for a minute there was a player that was that forgotten. Like somehow sneaked into the team and nobody had noticed as an extra midfielder.
Yeah, he's that bad. Yeah, I've got a 4-3-3, 3 centre mids, all from Chelsea, all currently out on loan elsewhere. I'll start with Danny Drinkwater.
Fire them all off.
Danny Drinkwater, Marco Van Ginkel, and Kamui Bakayoko.
Oh, God. Yeah, where does it end? Where does it end with Chelsea? Because I've got Lewis Baker as well.
Yeah.
Although, is he more of a wide man, I think? Or
No, he is a centre mid. We had him on loan. He was one of them. Another like Josh McEachran, all of those ones
yeah,
come through the Chelsea academy, going to be the next big thing, and then flop. I think the only one who's probably done it with any sort of success recently is Mason Mount.
yeah. Well, let's go through them one by one. I think like you have to start at the top, which is Van Ginkel. 2013, he joined Chelsea,
Yeah,
4 appearances.
it's just
Maybe,
crazy, isn't it? I
yeah.
don't get what is going on with him.
Well, I
So
know he did have serious injuries in his first couple of seasons,
yeah,
which
and
a
that's
big,
understandable.
yeah.
But with that, he's been on loan at PSG since 2016. So like, what's the
How
long?
has nobody picked up the phone in that time and thought, I tell you what, could we do a permanent move
Yeah,
here?
like that's what I mean. What's the long-term plan? Because everyone knows about Chelsea's sort of production line of talent, where they'll bring in these kids, they'll loan them out and sell them on for a huge profit, or they'll farm them into the first team. And
Yeah,
it's a good little model they've got there. But
yeah.
he doesn't fit into that. He's 28 now, so he's never going to suddenly break
Oh, and
into
I can't
Chelsea's
believe he's
team.
28. I can't believe he's 28. And like clearly a decent player. He scored 14 goals in 28 games in one of his PSV loan seasons.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't
Capped
know
by
what like
Netherlands.
yeah, yeah. I
I
think
just
he's a shoo-in in midfield.
yeah.
Drinkwater and Bakayoko. I mean, Drinkwater was an odd signing
Yeah, I think he was one of
altogether.
those, wasn't he, where it was just a perfect storm for him at Leicester. That
Yeah,
title winning season, obviously, Kante and Mahrez moved on to bigger and better things. Vardy, everyone knows about Jamie Vardy. I think Drinkwater was, for him personally, that Leicester season was just the right place at the right time. It was
mm,
like when Charlie Adam looked like the Scottish Zidane when he was at Blackpool. It
yeah,
just every now and again a player's just in a team at a club and it just works for them. And
mm,
I think that's what it was for Drinkwater. I don't think it was ever going to work for him at Chelsea, and it
yeah,
clearly hasn't.
yeah. And he's had a couple of very unsuccessful loans in the Premier League.
Yeah. Well, he's just
I'm
gone
not even
to
sure
Kasimpasa in Turkey. I mean, we
yeah,
talk about Fenerbahce. Like, at least if you go to Fenerbahce, you're going to a top Turkish team. I mean, who
yeah,
are Kasimpasa?
yeah. That's exactly what Danny Drinkwater was asking. Um, yeah, strong contender. And Bakayoko came in from Monaco.
Yeah, he was part of that really good Monaco team, wasn't he? With like Thomas Lemar, Fabinho, Mbappe before
Yeah.
he went to PSG.
What have his
What
loan spells been? Has he been
he went,
consistently getting back to Milan or
yes, he went to Milan, went back to Monaco.
yeah,
Currently at Napoli.
yeah,
So the first two teams had an option to buy on him, and obviously neither of them have taken it up. He's now on loan at Monaco. I think with him, he's a bit of a. It's in his head. So I was reading about how when he was at Monaco, obviously everyone expected him to be the next big thing, and they had to basically take him to one side. He sold his big flashy house and moved into a small apartment. He sold his fleet of pink cars and bought like a
as you
black
do.
car. And Claude Makelele essentially had to take him under his wing and sort of school him through what he needs to do to become a better player. And it looked like it obviously worked for a while, but I feel like that's obviously just gone wrong somewhere because he was appalling for Chelsea. He was
Yeah.
so bad.
Yeah, and it was like, but it was so evident from like the first game. It wasn't
Yeah.
those like one of those where, oh yeah, over the course of the season it didn't work out. Like it was so clear from the
Yeah,
first game.
from
This
the
guy
first
was,
game of the season that it just wasn't going to happen. And they bought him in for 40 million. It wasn't like he was
yeah,
some player that they just took a little gamble on, and you never know. Like 40 million, even for a club at Chelsea, is a lot of money,
yeah.
and he's
I
just
mean,
been
I can
awful.
understand how he might fall into the habits of the high life, living in Chelsea, then Milan,
Yeah,
then Monaco, then
Monaco.
Naples.
And
I mean, that's
he's
that's
accustomed to
dreaming.
certain things,
Yeah, exactly. Danny Drinkwater's loan spells Villa, Burnley.
isn't it?
Now,
Not as
so
much, Danny.
yeah. Um,
Who
okay,
have you got in the
I
middle?
reckon we can definitely get one of them in, but I'd like to make a case for one of my midfielders.
Yeah, go for it.
I've got Henry Saive, who's at Newcastle.
Yeah, okay.
Now he joined from Bordeaux in January 2016. He's made 7 appearances in 5 seasons. He's
Jeez.
still there. He's not on loan anywhere.
It's just there.
I have no recollection of this guy ever playing in the Premier League.
The
And
only reason I even remember he exists is because he was an absolute monster on one of the old Football Manager games. He became the best player in the world, and that is literally the only reason I can even recognise his name. Because yeah, if you'd have asked me where he is, I wouldn't have thought he was still at Newcastle. Not a
yeah,
chance.
Crazy. And then going from someone like who I don't have any recollection of, there's another one who I'm not actually sure this guy's real. I think this is just a name that's been like dropped into a website as a test.
Yeah.
Yaroslav Yak at Crystal Palace. Now, apparently he was bought. He's 26 years old, Polish. So it's not like they've taken a punt on a kid necessarily when they bought him 3 years ago. He's made one EFL Cup appearance, and that was this season. Like, I'm not even sure Palace fans know who this guy is.
Yeah, that's a weird one. No, I've never heard of him.
Yeah.
Saive, heard of, just didn't realise he was still at Newcastle.
Yeah,
Yaroslav Yak, I've never even heard of.
So maybe Yak actually doesn't fit the bill then, because did we remember him in the first place to forget him?
I've never even heard of him, I don't think.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fair. So let's get Saive, and if you said you've forgotten he was at Newcastle, alongside Van Ginkel, and I'll give you a choice of your Chelsea boys.
I'll go Bakayoko.
Yeah, I reckon Bakayoko's a good shout.
40 million on him, and I imagine most people probably think he left a couple of seasons ago. So yeah, I'll go Bakayoko.
Bakayoko. So 3-man midfield of Saive, Bakayoko, and Van Ginkel. Yeah. You got what then? 2 wingers and a striker?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
what wingers you got?
And this is just a very quick one. Obviously, Mesut Ozil would be in here, but it looks like he's about to leave any second, if not already confirmed. So that's the only reason I didn't put him in. Otherwise, he would have been straight in there.
Yeah.
So my wingers on the right, I've got Yannick Bolasie, who is still at Everton after a £30 million move, still sitting on 80 grand a week. He's had a loan at Villa, Anderlecht, and Sporting Lisbon, but never really done anything on any of them. Linked with us heavily, and he still is this window. Doesn't look like it's going to happen because obviously the wages are a massive stumbling block. But he's another one, 30 million, 80 grand a week, and I think most people probably forgot he exists.
Yeah, especially because I think this is something that came up maybe with West Ham. Been such a turnaround of players at Everton.
Yeah.
With the change of managers and whatnot, and yeah, they've spent quite a lot of money on a lot of forwards, and you would just forget that he ever really had a chance there. Did he have about half a season in the side? Was it Allardyce that signed him?
So he did. He started all right, and he did his ACL and was out for basically 2 full years.
Yeah.
And then after that, has just never done anything. He didn't do well on loan at Villa. Did all right at Anderlecht, I think. Didn't do particularly well at Sporting, and now he's just back there, sat on an 80 grand a week contract.
Yeah, cushy.
It's all right.
Who else have you got on the other wing?
On the left, again, this isn't someone that you'll necessarily have forgotten that he exists, especially you. But when he was signed by his current team, there was such immense hype around him. So to go from that to currently being on loan at Hoffenheim, it's Ryan Sessegnon.
Yeah.
So obviously he broke into the Fulham team at 16, become the first footballer born after the year 2000, score a league goal in England. Obviously the season that Fulham went up, he was absolutely sensational, cleaned up, won pretty much every award that season, I think. Scored 15 goals, countless assists. Came to Tottenham with a huge amount of hype around him. Obviously, he's still only very young, so I'm not saying he hasn't lived up to that. But to go from that amount of hype to then not really doing anything at Tottenham and ending up out on loan.
Yeah.
Most people, again, I imagine if you said, where's Ryan Sessegnon now? They'd be like, don't know.
Yeah, I think especially because it's quite an obscure loan move.
Yeah, Hoffenheim.
I think, Spurs this is the first time with Sessegnon that Spurs have thought anything through. They've picked a loan move where he's playing at left wing back. He's playing every week and he's getting really good reviews. But they effectively bought Sessegnon seemingly without any plan of how they were going to get him into the side, whether he's going to play left back, whether he was going to play further forward. He's had a couple of injuries and the manager's changed. But yeah, it's not worked out so far. But they've now seemed to put a plan together where they want him to get experience at left wing back and then either compete with or possibly replace Reguilon if he generates interest elsewhere or is bought back from Real Madrid because there's a buyback clause. So yeah, I think he's well and truly on Tottenham fans' radars, but probably, considering the hype,
Yeah.
has probably disappeared off a lot of others. And I think that's an important element, is that, like, I'm going to mention a couple of wingers here that long forgotten from Premier League fans' minds, but they were never really in Premier League fans' minds, like Ryan Sessegnon may have been. So I think Sessegnon's probably got a strong case. I've already mentioned Lewis Baker. I've got Lewis Baker in. One senior appearance for Chelsea since January 2014, 9 different loan spells. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Again, this guy's a genius, his agent is.
Yeah.
He's
How
picking
does
up Chelsea wages to go and play. I think he's at Trabzonspor now. He's been at Borough, Vitesse, obviously.
Yeah, the standard Vitesse loan. He was on loan at Leeds for a bit.
Yeah. So it's astounding that he's still contracted to Chelsea.
Yeah.
And then on the other wing, I've got Gazelle from Leicester. So bought for 12.5 million. They were looking for a replacement for Mahrez. He's scored 1 Premier League goal and he was bombed out after a season. Last played March 2019.
Jeez, I didn't realise they paid that much for him.
Yeah, so they've done some good business in recent years, Leicester, but he was definitely a miss. Do any of those stand out for you? I think Balassi is a good shout.
Yeah, I'd go Balassi and Gazelle. I think, like I say, Ryan Sessegnon was more in because he came into to Tottenham and his stock was up here, and it's perhaps dropped to here, so he's not necessarily forgotten. It's just
the type certainly has.
He's just gone off the radar a bit. So yeah, I'd probably go for those two.
Yeah. Okay. No, that seems fair. And then who's banging in all the goals?
This is another one that maybe my Borough bias perhaps put him in here. I've gone for Jordan Hugill.
Oh, that's good actually.
Another one that I imagine most people will have forgotten that West Ham even signed. So never been particularly prolific, and then he had an all right sort of 18 months at Preston. Started the season, I think he had 11 by January or something like that. So again, nothing good, but nothing incredible. And West Ham went out and spent 10 million on him.
Yeah,
he's made 3 appearances for West Ham across all competitions, never scored a goal, and then has just been back out on loan in the Championship ever since.
Yeah, it was such an odd move from West Ham to go and get an English striker from the Championship who scores no goals, as opposed to a continental striker who comes in and scores no goals.
Yeah.
So, but that is, I'd definitely forgotten he was still at West Ham. So I think he's a strong shout. I've gone for Leo Bonatini.
he was who I had in originally as well.
Yeah, and then I realised we actually need someone to put the ball in the net, which he hasn't done in the league for Wolves since December 2017. So I think he was like one of the first in the wave of signings, and like came in on loan and scored 12 and 22. Hasn't scored since for Wolves. Like a Brazilian Rufus Smalls. I think they're both credible shouts. But as soon as you said Jordan Hugill, I literally went, "Oh my god, he still plays for West Ham."
Yeah,
and that is exactly the point of this team. So I think Hugill is definitely the right man to lead the line.
Sweet.
Cool. So let's just go over. I love that. I loved looking into that. It's crazy. If you've got the spare 2 minutes, look at Chelsea's full squad list on Transfermarkt and see all their loans that they've got out, and also the contract lengths on some of those loans. Like, you wouldn't believe they've still got 2 or 3. Some of them have still got 2 or 3 years left on their contracts.
Yeah.
Incredible. So we've got Karius, Moses, Gibson, Reed, Rose, Saive, Van Ginkel, Bakayoko, Gazelle, Balassi, and Hugill. One incredibly forgettable Funbined 11.
Wow.
That's all we've got time for.
Right.
Pardon, Aaron?
It started off all right, that team, to be fair. Goalkeeper and defence is all right. Midfield's a little bit questionable, but not bad. It really, really suffers when you get up top, though, doesn't it?
not a lot of quality in that front area. Yeah. So we'll keep the seats all right. A few clean sheets with the right manager, pick up a few points.
Yeah. See
But,
what we can do.
yeah, we would have to buy a whole load of new players in January anyway, because these would all be on loan somewhere obscure. Yeah, exactly. They're all approaching their Fenerbahce window if they haven't been there already. That's all I've got time for on this week's episode. If you've got any great shouts for forgotten Premier League footballers, get back to us on Twitter. You can follow us at table 442, table 44T1, I beg my pardon. The 4 is spelled F. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel at table 442 as well. Anything to add, Aaron, before we bid our listeners farewell?
No, just thank you for the support off the back of the first episode, and we look forward to doing more episodes going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep an eye out. We're going to hope to have a weekly episode out on a Thursday or a Friday going forward. So, yeah, please continue to tune in and give us all the constructive feedback you'd like. Until next time, cheers, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers. Bye.